Say you're a single operator, you're in the field, you have your phone, you should be able to instantly respond to a lead coming in on your phone. Google moves towards AI. We are seeing the website become even more of a data feed to Google than it was.
Do you think it's possible to build an audience and own your audience in these niches?
Well, I do think.
Welcome to episode 9 of Expanding Local. Today I'm here with Mike Blumenthal. He is the co-founder and analyst at Near Media. He has been in the space since 1995 and has been focused on local search since Google Maps was released in 2004. There's a million other things that I could go over in the introduction, but I think I'd much rather hear it from you. Mike, thanks for coming here, and could you give a brief introduction?
Sure. So my family I was in a retail family business that had been open for 60 years. So my real entree into the internet, which started in 1995, didn't start until we got our retail asses kicked by all the big players, by the changing dynamics of mail order, by the changing dynamics of internet. And we were very successful until we weren't. So I started off my career in the internet with a huge failure, just so people know. Subsequent to that, I got really engaged with local, and through that, met some wonderful people, both through my blog and then through Local U, which I helped co-found, and then through Gather Up, which I helped co-found, which was a review management product. And basically my life has revolved around local search marketing, business management, business opportunities, marketing, since I closed my family business in 2001. And I'll tell you, as hard as it was, I was curled in a ball on my bed for a week, couldn't get out of bed to time. It was the biggest silver lining I ever could have imagined, because I get to meet people like you and many others, and it's a wondrous world. So,
perfect. And you've been in the space for a very long time. What have you seen?
Yeah, it's a problem when you live a long time. You end up being places a long time.
Well, I just love that you've been focused on local SEO for a very long time. There's not a lot of people that you can really talk to that have the, wealth of knowledge that you might have. Not might have, but do have. How have things changed from...
Might have, because I've probably forgotten it.
No, I think you're pretty good, Mike. What's changed? I know, there's these little constant changes, and you have to kind of switch up tactics, but I feel like the principles of marketing and local search have always really been the same, and the algorithm is always just focused on retention and driving value to the consumers of whether it's a home service business or product. But what have you seen change overall throughout your time in local SEO?
So the big changes, when I first got actively into the space of local, it was a much more competitive environment where it was possible that there were multiple players in the space, Yahoo and Yelp and other companies, many, many, many other companies, Insider Pages, Yellow Pages, all these guys. And it was interesting to me to watch Google's sort of battle, and the mapping companies who are also potentially going into this space. And so one of the big changes was Google merged local and maps, and with a good boy smile on their face, went after all the local companies on one side and all the map companies on the other, until essentially they had annihilated them. So that was the first big change, was a move from a open competitive space in, say, 2005 to a much more constrained space by 2010, where Google was the primary monopolist here and around the world with a 95% share in local. And then it became sort of answering to the Google algorithm to a large extent. And we saw the evolution of Google to be more visual, with more, the application of early AI to imagery, the increasing use of video. We saw the increasing monetization of local, where they started putting the ability to book and to reserve and to order things right in local. So that was the next big shift that happened from, say, 2010 on to right now, where the big focus is on products, integrating products into local as part of this transactional world. And then the big shift we're seeing now is and throughout that we saw this diminishing of value of your website, in the sense that not that it wasn't still important and isn't still important, it still is, but diminished in terms of visits. This decline in visits to your website has been going on for the last 10 years. In local, it hasn't mattered so much, that you don't get as many people to your website, because you can still convert them from Google. So that's been a big shift. But now the other shift that's happening is, as Google moves towards AI, we are seeing the website become even more of a data feed to Google than it was. And so the shift to AI is the current sort of ongoing big shift that we're seeing. And in that, there's, for the first time, I think in a long time, there's a chance that the space may open up again, and the monopolists that we've known to all come and love, and those are air quotes for those that are listening to this podcast and not watching me, love, there's some chance that power will be diminished over the next 5 years, and I'm optimistic about that. I think that's a good thing for businesses.
And so how do home service businesses set themselves up if a player like Google becomes the much less dominant that they have been for the past 10 years?
Well, I think the real question is, how do you set yourself up now to not be crushed by Google? And I think if you do that, you will be well positioned for what's coming. I think that as much as the website has diminished in traffic, it has increased in its import to all these companies because it's feeding data to them. So I think you need a great website that talks about who you are, your brand, what you do, and where you do it clearly, with each product or service, product and service, I guess in home service would be a service, having an own dedicated page so that you can explain that. So that's very clear. I think you need to think in terms of great imagery. Google has been, for the last 5 years, has focused on great imagery, and my research has indicated that people convert, that great imagery helps you on Google, but it also helps people convert when they do make it to your website. And great imagery now is multimedia. It's great stills and it's great video. And as you're seeing today with this Riverside, the tools to produce great video are present and quite competent. And so you as an agency, for example, could interview a business person like me for, say, an hour and produce a year's worth of video content for their website in 2-minute segments that could then be uploaded, or 30-second segments, whatever, or minute segments that could be uploaded around the internet as shorts or as Google business profiles and on your website to help people convert. So I think having a great website is going to help you currently with Google, but having great photos, great videos, I think is helpful. I think that that schema, while not incredibly valuable to a single location business, is incredibly valuable to multi-location businesses, something you want to think about in terms of the technical side of your site. And then I think you always had to own as much of your own equity on the internet as you can, and develop your own direct relationship with your customers so that you're not continually renting them from Google, Facebook, Twitter, wherever, Blue Sky, whatever in the future is going to come. You don't ever want to be in the position where you have to rent customers to keep your doors open. You want to develop a direct relationship with them, whether that's email and text, snail mail, doesn't matter, but you need to be able to stay in touch with them, because those are both your best referral base and your future customer base. And that, if you do all that well, you will be well positioned for the future of AI, because the AI needs your website data, it needs your images, it needs your structured data, and you will do well. And then finally, to do well in the future, but is to have really good analytics now, call tracking, web analytics, email tracking, so that you can see what is working and what isn't, in terms of keeping your business vibrant, and that will become equally important. I mean, most people don't bother to look at their metrics from Apple Maps. Now, most home services businesses aren't eligible for Apple Maps because it's location-based, but they do have a new feature where you can build your brand within the Apple Business section, the Business Connect. You can build your brand there, which will then influence the quality of your emails on Apple devices. You'll be able to see your logo. You can do Apple Pay more easily. It looks more legitimate. So and Apple right now, at least in, Apple has 55% of the U.S. market from a mobile phone point of view and a reasonable size of the desktop market. So I think one of the big potential players going forward is going to be Apple, both in the world of AI and not. And you need to be sure that they can see everything you've done up to this point and then measure whether or not they're impacting you.
Perfect. And you mentioned how these home service businesses should be owning their own audience. How does that differentiate between a company like an HVAC company or a plumbing company where, you go through the house and do an inspection maybe once a quarter, as opposed to a restoration company where it's like you have an emergency, like a toilet overflows, and then you call, you look, water damage cleanup near me, and then a restoration company pops up. Do you think that's ever going to change where you just have to dominate in the search results? Do you think it's possible to build an audience and own your audience in these niches?
Well, I do think that referrals still happen by word of mouth. I mean, I'm a big, I built a review company. I've been involved with reviews since 2008, built a review company in 2012, and feel that reviews are very important, but they're an extension of human behavior. They're not exclusive. I think that let's take the case of the restoration company. If I have a flood, I'm not going to I don't trust going to Google. I'm going to first call my brother or my sister and say, do you have any knowledge of these companies? So if that restoration company did do business with them and stayed in touch with them, sending them quarterly newsletters on some related topic or whatever, and they're front of mind, they're still going to get that referral. So the first thing every business should do is understand how customers find you, right? Now, Google is often the last touch point in their journey, even if they came by started with a referral. And Google has done a lot to convince people that they are the only touch point, right? I mean, Google loves showing analytics that user A converted or whatever. But you have to realize that customer journeys are very complicated. We do a lot of consumer behavior research at Near Media, and consumer behavior is not linear like that. They don't go to Google, find you, and come to your business. They go to their sister. The sister says, gee, check out this company. They go, maybe they go on Facebook. They say, in the Facebook group, who should I look at? Then they start doing research. Then they find 3 or 4 companies that might qualify. Then they narrow it down to 1 or 2. They contact them, and whichever gets back in touch with them fastest with the most reasonable answers wins the business, right? So the other thing is starting by understanding what your customer journey really is, and then making sure that you're satisfying it at every position, and that your business processes are such that your lead follow-up is minutes, not days. I mean, I've worked with so many construction people that think that that the world revolves around them, not around the customer. And it's really problematic, right? And I think that small guys particularly should be able to leverage technology. Say you're a single operator, you're in the field, you have your phone, you should be able to instantly respond to a lead coming in on your phone with an honest, straightforward response so they know you care. So not only did you do well on your website, and as a result, you're doing well on Google and whatever other places, and you have customers referring people to you. But when that lead comes in, damn, if you're not answering it like that, you're going to lose the other guy who did answer it like that. So it's a combination of great marketing, measuring and understanding your customer journeys, and then executing. In terms of understanding customer journey, you really should survey new customers once a year. How did you how did you get to me? What was the last step? What was the first step? So that you understand that, and then you have some basis in reality for your next year's plan. Okay, they looked at the video here, they went to Facebook there, they asked their friend here, so you know what percentage of people are coming which way and which of these channels is having the most value.
Perfect.
Because
And
the problem with analytics is it's all after the fact, right? You see what happened after they got to Google, and you think, oh, that must be the beginning, but it isn't the beginning. The beginning is much bigger and longer and messier. You had a chance to fix it or not fix it along the way. And so you need to understand the journey, which is what we're doing in Near Media. We put together panels of 200 people. We give them a problem. We say, gee, you're flooded. Go to Google and solve this problem. We can then see what even at Google it's messy, right? We don't even know how they got to Google in the real world, but even at Google it's messy. We've seen people go, like in some verticals, go 20 deep in the local finder. In other verticals, we see them dig into the maps to find people that are close. In other verticals, we see them ignore local and go to the organic because they're looking for more gravitas, whatever. In some, we see them focus very heavily on ads. So the other final point of this long diatribe, for which I apologize,
no, it's good.
is understanding your vertical, which most people don't. In
And
other
so
words, behavior in your vertical.
you talked about consumer behavior. Have you seen any changes with that recently in terms of how people are finding businesses and the level of trust they give to Google?
Hard question to answer. We've only been doing direct consumer research for about a year and a half, where we put together these panels, videotape them, listen to them, catalog it. So we don't have a great, like I said, most people look at Google Analytics after the fact. We don't have a great repository of information, how they behaved before. But we do see some things common and some things unique based on vertical. People still trust reviews. They still very regularly look at review ratings and quantity. That's still very important. There's some indication that people are trusting them a little bit less, but it's still pretty important to them. But beyond that, it's very vertical dependent, what they find valuable. For example, in healthcare, once they want the best, so they'll go through a local finder looking for the top 3 or 4. They'll go 20 deep. They'll pick 3 out. They'll go to the website then, and they'll look at the pictures on the website to see if they're in my tribe, right? If it's a woman, they'll be looking for women doctors. If it's a white male, they'll be looking for white male doctors. And if it's a black person, they'll be looking for black people, et cetera, et cetera. So they look at the pictures. I was watching one consumer come to a site, and it was this classic doctor picture with the 2 tall doctors in the middle and all the staff sort of behind them, and all the staff were women and behind them, and they said, oh, I would never go here because it looks like 2 white pricky males, right? Whatever. So think through who your audience is, know who your audience is, know how they behave in your vertical. But trust is different in different verticals. Like I said, some places some verticals it's location. We do still see, like in hotels and restaurants, healthcare, websites are still critically important to help finalize the decision. Less so in things like storage. We recently finished a kitchen renovation research in Europe. Now, Europeans behave differently than Americans, so I don't know how much of it applies here. Europeans, for example, 50% of them read reviews. In the United States, 20% of them read reviews. The others of them look at reviews as a proxy for quality, and very few of them read them. Those that do read them, they look to see if owners are responding. They look to see what the worst ones are. They look to see how recent they are. Different people have different sort of ways of navigating them. But again, only 20% are reading them.
Perfect. And so you're talking about reviews, and I feel like home service business owners, when they listen to that, they're thinking about, reviews on their Google business profile, maybe Yelp, maybe Facebook. Can you go into how just mentions of your business on social media can have an influence on your knowledge graph, and then as a result of that, your actual ranking?
So there's two different questions from my point of view, but let's talk about mentions. So let's talk about it in the context of brand, right? So in local, David Mim, Mary Bowling, Will Scott, years ago put together some of the first research on the Google ranking algorithm. And at the time, it was quite clear that Google was using brand as a ranking algorithm, as a part of the ranking algorithm. We could see if you had enough people search for your brand on Google that you would get a direct pin on the base layer of the map, for example. In the local business profile, they had a page called Web References. And when we explored what those web references were in relationship to the business, we would often see brand mentions without links at media sites. So brand has always been an element of the ranking algorithm. We just couldn't figure out how to measure it, right? We couldn't figure out how to determine what component of the ranking algorithm was. We knew that mentions, brand mentions, would be associated with your local entity, but we just didn't understand if it was the page that brand mention was on, or whether it was the frequency, or whether it was these brand searches, those sorts of things. Now that entity search has moved well beyond local into people and movies, books, theme parks, museums, all of these areas are now knowledge graph-based entity searches. More research is coming out that shows that not only are these brand mentions valuable in and of themselves, but that they, at brand searches as a percentage of your overall search, can give Google, and this information came out in the leak of search ranking factors, that brand searches as a percentage of total searches compared to your competitors will drive the visibility of your listing up. So if you're getting 20%, 50% more brand searches than the other people in your area, then you're going to be showing for all the other searches that much more.
How does that work with franchises and individual locations?
We don't know. This is not, it's a black box. We have very little information. I know that Google handles multi-locations differently than single locations. We just recently did a podcast with Brad Weatherall, who used to be the director of support at Google, and he was talking about how Google builds these trust scores. There's something similar to it, brand, some sort of way of understanding a brand as an entity. Regardless, it should, in the end, it doesn't matter. You want people searching for your brand. You want people to understand that they need to look for you. So the way to do that could be news media, where you get the mention on the page and then people go look you up. It could be a great big billboard. It could be other mediums that drive brand searches. It could be, others. We don't know fully the best behaviors to drive Google's understanding of your business as being more important as a brand than the business you're competing with. But we know it's important, and it has become obvious to everybody else. It was important to us. It was obvious to us in local since 2008. We just couldn't articulate the specifics of it. Now it's become clear it's not just mentions, but searches on your brand that drive this behavior.
And so if you're a brand new business in 2025, you have no online presence and you're just now building everything out. Obviously, you're going into a very competitive and, for the most part, developed landscape as opposed to what it may have been many years ago. How would you recommend they get the first phone call? If you've already optimized your Google business profile, already have
to me, optimizing my Google business profile is the last thing I would do. The first thing I would do is build a great website. Invest in a multi-page website, 6, 7, 8, 10 pages. I don't think a single page site's enough. If it's all you can afford, that's something else. I would build a great website. I would then reach out to everybody in my Rolodex for referrals and develop a relationship with the people in my Rolodex who know my work so that I'm building out real world contacts. I would then go to the newspaper, get an article on your business. So sort of in that order, right? Website, get some quotes from previous people that you've done work for, put them on your website, go to the press, get that announced so that this is out there, so that that you know that people know about you and might start searching for you, and the newspaper knows about you. So you're building a presence that's visible offline and online. Once that's done, then I would do a limited, quote-unquote, citation campaign. Citations are kind of weird because in local, when David Mim came up with the name citation in 2007 or something, based on research that I had done, he was looking for the words on my blog, which was web reference. He couldn't get a hold of me. He was publishing. He published it anyways. They became citations as opposed to web references. And citations became structured citations at all of these competing directories of the time. And they've stayed that way to some extent. But a citation, which I will now refer to as a sort of structured listing at Yelp or the Better Business Bureau, Facebook, I would go out and get those citations, again, before I do my Google business thing. So I do the Better Business Bureau, which we know Google looks at to make in your industry. I would do the local chamber. I would do Facebook, Yelp, and other directories that show up in typical branded and keyword searches in your industry. So search for some competitors, see which directories show up, get listed there. Search for some keywords in your market, see which directories show up on the first 2 pages, get listed there. I wouldn't do any more than that, and I wouldn't ever subscribe to a citation plan. You know, if you'd want somebody to do it for you, hire a Whitespark. They'll do it for you one and done. It's $269, whatever. So all of that to be done before your Google listing. And the reason for that is that, and that could be 3 months or 6 months. And the reason for that is that Google has lost trust in, or maybe never had trust in, service area businesses. They're making initial verification and very difficult. And they use your website and the age of your website. They use the Better Business Bureau. They use these mentions around the web and in that newspaper article as proof of your existence. They don't believe you just because you say it exists. If you do that and you go ahead and create it first, you're going to be in the sandbox for 6 months anyways. Nobody's going to see you, right? They don't trust you enough to show you. So, and you're not relevant enough to be shown because there's no external resources. So I wouldn't even bother trying to verify it until you've done this other work. Verify, be ready to do video verification, which means you have to be able to show a truck with a sign on it, marketing materials, a computer with your CMS on it, all that sort of stuff. So all that should be in place. So when you do video verification, you can show all that stuff to Google. So it's not this aggravating bunch of horsepucky that I see all the time in the Google business forums where poor businesses are spending endless hours attempting to get verified, right? It'll make it much easier if you do all the other stuff first, which you have to do anyways. It's like, why? Just because Google is ultimately going to be your best resource, it isn't going to be your best resource first. It's going to be a very low value resource. So build out the other resources first, then do Google. Maybe I've talked too long, but does that answer your
Not
question
at all.
from my point of view?
Yeah, and going off of that, I have 3 clients who are in the exact same industry, exact same franchise, and they launched at different times. For 2 of them, we built out citations before before launch, before the GBP was created, anything. For one of the other ones, we didn't build out citations yet. And the 2 that we built out citations for, they didn't have to do any video verification on their Google business profile.
Right.
Is that like the reason for that? Because that's what I suspect.
I mean, the reason is that there is a trust score. Again, we talked about this in the podcast that your media. Google has a trust score for business. That trust score comes from, in the case of a franchise, from the brand assigned some, but it also comes from these other signals, right? And it also comes from Google Analytics and Search Console having your email that you're claiming your Google business profile in an email on those places associated with your website. So Google, it likes to get this trust information every place it can. It gets it from the brand. It gets it from your website. It gets it from your previous relationship with Google through Webmaster Tools and Analytics, from knowing that you're a Better Business Bureau. All these things provide trust, make that verification process much easier. So in your case, they trusted them so much, they didn't have to do video verification. A real win for you. Good work.
Yeah, I was happy about that.
Yeah, well, you should be.
So after you get citations built, after you optimize your website, have some good pages on there, and then reach out to some newspapers, get some local mentions, local links, things like that. What is the next step for a brand new business?
Well, I would think in terms of lead management and response, right? I would think, I am a funder and advisor to a company called Leadferno, which does website-based SMS interactions to allow you, and brings that. So you install this on your website and potentially at whatever, wherever else you need it, and then it captures the information, allows you to communicate back to that potential client in real time on your phone. So if you're in the field, and brings that client data into a lightweight customer management platform. So I think and then from that customer management platform, you can do all the other stuff, right? Integrate with the mail program, integrate with a more sophisticated customer management system. But you need a way to capture these leads, respond to them quickly so you get the business, and to keep track of that information, email address, SMS number, going forward so that you can retain a relationship. So I think that's foundational, as is call tracking. I think call tracking shouldn't be optional anymore. I think if you have a mobile number, you should, or you could buy a number from Number Barn and make it virtual, make that your forward-facing number, and it forwards everything to your phone. But it should be through some sort of call tracking system like CallRail or some other one. So processes and tracking should be next, and the processing needs to be able to capture critical client information so you can get back in touch with them in the future and respond to them immediately now. So big fan of Leadferno. I think Aaron Wyke, really smart guy, does a great job in terms of managing leads quickly, and then analytics and call tracking. Then you're ready, you may have to go out and do the work before this because you need to put food on the table, but then you're ready to sort of start marketing your business through both offline and online channels so that you can handle the success and make it successful. And remembering that making it successful means it's got to be a customer journey that's fun for them. They got to look at you and say, oh, you look like you're a good company to do business with. Then when they interact with you, it's got to be easy. And then when you do the job, you communicate with them. You say you're going to be there at 8:30, get there at 8:30. And if you don't, then text them that you're going to be late, right? And then bill them what you said you were going to bill them. I just went through a home renovation project, and the whole first year was a nightmare until I fired the company and hired a different company. And it took me 6 months after I fired the first company to hire a second one. And the first, it was a total nightmare. And it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be alienating me, to get my business, to do business, to make money, right? So, analytics, process, then you're ready to do.
Perfect. And so one of the things that I like to do with my clients is look up a bunch of people also ask questions for their industry, and then hop on a call like this, Riverside, and then just ask those questions to them, get their answers. And then we use the transcript of that video to publish them as blog posts. Would you say that's the right way to go about adding video content to your website? Do you think they should be embedded on pages, or how would you go about that?
So I think from a technology point of view, it's a great tool. I think Riverside's a great tool because it does such good quality that I'm using my iPhone as my camera, and the quality is super. And I inexpensive mic. It was $100, super quality. AirPods so that I don't get echo. I think the methodology is wonderful. I think I would, and I hope I assume you're doing video and content, take video and content. And then that video can then be repurposed in a million places. But I think these days, blogging isn't as important as, and once you have enough content, you have enough content, right? In other words, once you described who you are, where you do it, what you do, and ultimately how you do it, things like pricing and specifics around jobs, where all of these videos are useful, like how do you do it? Here's the process. At that point, then, I am not as big a fan of blogging as I used to be as a base marketing tool. I would look more to perhaps third parties for publishing this content. Now, whether that's social, where you take a snippet of the video and put it on Instagram or TikTok if it's around, Facebook, if you can build audience in those places, but doing them into a vacuum is not very much fun. Or you may want to consider taking this content and rewriting it in a way, let's say it's how-to content, how to fix the plunger in your toilet. I mean, I could watch a video all day long. I am still going to call a frickin' plumber, right? And that kind of content, you need to perhaps maybe get a radio show set up on the local radio station, have articles in the newspaper, as well as just the pure digital play. I think that getting the word out in your local market is critically important. And I think that these brand mentions we talked about before, it's a way to get those. You go to the newspapers, see if these interviews could be turned into that kind of content that they're looking for, and get it, do it that way. So I think you don't want to limit yourself to pure digital anymore, pure social anymore. I think if you do a local newspaper, you're going to be online and offline. If you do have a radio interview and you can get the transcripts, which we now can get quite easily, you can be on the radio. You then have that content elsewhere, driving traffic to your site, driving brand searches, driving links, all that sort of stuff. So I would go light on the blogging and heavy on the external exposure these days.
And I'm sure this really depends by industry and the type of content you want posted. What is a realistic budget for a home service business to begin getting external mentions from these different paid media platforms?
I mean, the reality is they can do it for free if they've got the time and the inclination. If they're using an agency, then the agency can't do it for free. Whether it's build a website, do all the citations, get the CMS and all that sort of stuff going. The problem is many of these people are do-it-yourself types, and they don't know when to outsource and when to do it themselves. The reality is it needs to be professional at every level, and the reality is they can't be professional at every level. That being said, some of this stuff can be done for free. I mean, you can go to the local, depending on the town, the local newspaper, the local online sort of mommy blog, whatever, and strike up a conversation and see if you can get it. If you're an agency doing it for them, you're probably, I have trouble with all of this stuff understanding how you can do it for less than a couple grand a month. I don't know, maybe you can, but it's expensive. And if you're at a point where you can't afford a couple grand and up a month because you don't have the volume, then you're going to have to piece this together on your own, but don't cut corners. Don't think you can win at Google if you haven't done all the other stuff. Don't think you can cheat at Google and without understanding the rules, you're going to get suspended, right? So there's all these issues that stand in the way of success. But you could, for example, get by with a single page website. I've been playing, and we interviewed the creator of this, soloist.ai. It's a single page website that you can buy a domain for and point to it. And I've used it for I do some pro bono work for some local businesses, and it's adequate, right? So some of these areas you can cut expenses now with the idea that you can do a better job later so that you can get going. But if they're doing it, if they're going to have to outsource it, what do you charge for all this? Is there really a better question than asking me what I think they should be paying?
Yeah, well, we do full service. It's pretty much like $3,500 to $4,500 a month.
Right. So
yeah,
and that's reasonable given how much all the things I just described. I don't know how many of them you do, but given how much work there is, that's a reasonable thing. And it's a while before they can get to that, right? I do have an open email, mike@blumenthals.com or mblumenthal@nearmedia.co. If you do have somebody just getting started and they can't afford your $4,500 and they want, they have a couple specific questions, reach out to me. I'm glad to answer them. And then if I can remember, I'll refer them to you when they get big enough.
Awesome. Well, hopefully you remember me. Awesome. So when it comes to backlinks, what kind of links should people be prioritizing for home service?
I don't think you should be prioritizing backlinks. Is that extreme position? I think that if you in local, it depends on the market. Firstly, it depends on the market, right? Some markets are just not very competitive, and if you got a backlink from your local chamber and maybe a backlink from that newspaper article, you're ahead of the game in some sense. And then if you have an ongoing way of producing content externally for the mommy blog, for the newspaper, for the radio station, you're going to get your fair share of backlinks organically that are going to be more important and more valuable than any backlink you can buy. Now, if you are focused on backlinks, I would focus on organic backlinks, right? Supporting a not-for-profit and making sure that the donation that you're already giving to them results in a backlink. Those kinds of things. I would say local backlinks, industry-relevant backlinks, content-relevant backlinks. But I think that we have this problem in marketing, most marketers, where we tend to look for the silver bullet that ends up putting the cart before the horse. Let's get reviews rather than let's take good care of our customers so that they give us good reviews. We talk about getting backlinks instead of generating great content that people want to link to or relationships that people want to link for. And I think you need to understand that everything you do offline needs to be translated online. So if you have a relationship with the local plumbing outlet, ask them if they wouldn't mention your site. If you have a relationship, so that's a relationship link with a relevant local site. Plumbing supplies, linking to the plumber, those kinds of things. Maybe the city has a link for your license. Chamber of Commerce has a link in your category. Those kinds of links that are a combination of local, perhaps industry, but are maybe built through relationships. You're at a chamber meeting, you're introducing yourself. If people have a site where you could donate, say $100 to Warm Hearts of Olean, which gives sneakers to kids, and for $100 they'd put a link to you on your website. Hey, why not? Why not do that? But that comes from this relationship and then Google sees it as an organic relationship, and it's not link building, it's relationship building, right?
Yeah.
And it's putting that link in front of people who go to the Warm Hearts website, who then see that you support it, and then when they need your plumbing services, might think of you. So it has multiple values that go way beyond getting a link on a plumbing blog in Ukraine or wherever.
How important do you think it is to take up various spots as a home service business on the SERP page? Because I know there's been a lot of change. I'm sure you would agree that the SERP page is changing where it has the AI overview, and there's people also ask, then there's like social media mentioned, and there's also videos, like forums, there's a million different things, and then you finally can get to organic. I feel like this has less impacted home service businesses, but I don't see that really changing because Google makes money on the SERP page. How important is it to take those spots? Do you think those spots convert into leads? What's your thoughts there?
What we've seen in our consumer behavior research is it varies tremendously by vertical. I mean, local isn't a thing, it's a collection of verticals. And I haven't done a home services research project, so I can't tell you explicitly whether it's worth doing or not doing any given thing. I mean, we saw this. Tell you a story just so I can explain how complicated it can get. So we were doing research in employment law for a large 25 location employment lawyer, and people in employment law typically weren't concerned with location as much. They wanted somebody in their area. They were looking first and foremost for gravitas, for seriousness, years in business, and then secondarily for quality, review stars. And so they would frequently they would do the query, they would then say, oh, I don't read reviews typically. I don't read ads typically. They would scroll down to local. Sometimes they go in local back, maybe 30-40% of the time, looking for reviews. But then they frequently, 55% of the time, go into organic. And particularly if somebody had stars, maybe they were done with product reviews rather than legitimate local reviews, they would use that as a metric. They'd then go out to the website, look to see if the site, and they might go out to 2 or 3, right? So it didn't much matter in that situation. Regular ads weren't working, local pack wasn't working as well as organic, and they would comb through organic. They'd pick 2 or 3, and they'd pick one based on the visit to the website. When Google added in local service ads to the top of this, which happened about a third of the queries, user behavior changed dramatically. People who had previously said they don't read reviews would go back up, they would see the Google guarantee, or Google, oops, sorry about that. They would see the Google guarantee, they would see the years in business, they would see the picture, they would see the reviews, all things that were important. They would change their behavior, go back and pick the LSA ad roughly a third of the time. So it went from 55, 45, 10, in other words, organic 55, local 45, pack, local pack 45, 10% ads, to a third, a third, a third. So user behavior changes based on what Google is presenting. And if you think Google doesn't know this, they know it. Because clearly, and which is why knowing your vertical is critical. In other words, doing a range of these searches, having consumers do these searches, because you never know what crazy cockamamie way they're going to search for stuff. Having them do these searches and seeing what Google delivers, understanding this full range, and then seeing how consumers respond to them, only then can I answer your question. And I would be glad to do some research for your company, probably make you the best home service provider agency ever. But
Wow, I would love that. I don't know if I can afford it, though.
well, when you can, come see me.
For LSA in particular, because I talked about SERP and I didn't even mention LSA. Do you think, or maybe not do you think, because I know you have data on this, is local services ads are consumers becoming smarter and kind of understanding that LSA is an ad, or have they always known it was an ad? I really like the way LSA works, where you're at the very top of the page, you have that green badge, it shows your reviews. It looks very trustworthy, but I know consumers are just tired of ads. Are you seeing any shift happening there with LSA?
Well, Google doesn't note them very well, right? Their annotation that's an ad is not very obvious in many of the local service ad situations. And users do trust Google, they trust reviews, and they trust the Google guarantee. I did an interview with a consumer who was defrauded by an air duct cleaner in Florida. And he was in a rush, and he chose a fraudulent local service ad because it was Google guaranteed. He realized when the guy came to his house that, things weren't going well. The guy got fleeced out of $600. Went to the police, and the police said, "Oh, it's Google guaranteed. What are you worried about?" This is what the policeman said after this poor consumer had been hijacked for $600 for a $90 job. So the answer is, and this guy thought he knew better, right? But that's both. There's two sides to that story. One is that there's a fair bit of fraud in home services, but Google's presentation is very compelling, and it does overcome. We saw it in legal. We saw it in this anecdotal story. It does, because of the guarantee, the reviews, the pictures, all that stuff. It does overcome. It meets the basic needs of what people are looking for. In that sense, it's a very powerful ad unit. And if you can afford it, if the numbers work out on the cost versus the value of the leads, I'd say it's a must-do. But
Perfect. And then compared to local services ads, that one sponsored Google business profile post that's at the very top that it's like sneaks in there. Have you seen that perform better than?
No, very poorly, actually. We have not seen it perform very well. I don't know. What are you seeing? Now, again, I'm not directly in your vertical. Like I said, love to do some research. But we have not seen that ad perform well.
For real estate, we have.
Okay.
And this is just, if you're running ads on Google Ad and Connect or Google Business Profile, real estate's one we've seen it work super well for. Probably not enough data to talk on any other home service industries, but
Right.
From my perspective, I almost get caught by it a lot if I'm looking for a business near me. It's a very sneaky little spot.
Very sneaky. I think to some extent it may be vertical dependent as well. Like what we saw in storage, for example, people were only concerned with two things: price and proximity. And so they would go into the map at the top and they would jigger the map so rank became irrelevant, right? Till they saw three or four, they'd look at them, and if one of them had a special, whether it was an ad or not, didn't matter, they would pick it, right? So to some extent, again, it's vertical specific, both what people trust and are willing to trust, willing to use. If it's a doctor or even a lawyer, I doubt that ads are going to be that compelling. In the home service, in the kitchen reconstruction, we saw some indication in Europe that people said, "Oh, they have enough money to advertise. That must add to their legitimacy." But again, you can't take any of the research you read out on the great internet that's general or vertical and apply it to some other vertical. Behaviors vary because human needs vary by vertical.
Perfect. You talked about proximity. Can you go into how important proximity is, and also if you think that's going to change? Because right now I feel like it's almost a little ridiculous how much that plays into a ranking, role.
Right. So this started with the Venice update in 2012, where Google started localizing organic websites very aggressively against national websites. And then in 2013 with what was called the Pigeon update, where they dramatically narrowed the radius in which a query was made. And then as cell phone use and location information became more valuable, Google further centralized it around the assumed location of the phone, so you could see different results literally block to block as you're walking through a city. The current algorithm is brittle in that sense, in that it looks at the competition, it looks at the geography, and proximity is sort of a leading factor. If there's enough competition within this radius, it's going to show you results. If it takes this radius to show you results, it'll expand the viewport for that. So to some extent, it depends on how competitive your niche is. So if you're a plumber and there's 57 plumbers around you, it's going to be a much tighter circle. And if there's one 20 miles away, it's going to be a bigger circle. So again, that's very market specific, but it is one of the, along with relevance driven by business name, those are two of the key ranking factors in this algorithm at this moment. Do I think it's going to change? And I do, because AI has the potential to break through the rigidity and brittleness of that algorithm. So you might say, show me to an AI that has a good understanding of both the local entities and of the reviews and of what's said around the web and of things that these businesses do from their website. You say to the AI, show me the plumbers that specialize in X within a 30-mile radius of my home that are available on weekends. That's a complicated query, but that's not a query that we would make that query if we could, right? AI portends or hints at the ability to make those kind of complicated queries. If that happens, then this brittleness of proximity and relevance changes.
And so how do you send those signals to Google properly that you do X and Y location? How do you make sure you're training? And so like on the website,
I mean, there's some, you can do some of it in GBP, but the bulk of it is your website.
So on your website, how do you like word things? How do you make sure that you're kind of sending that signal the right way? Is there any specific?
Well, one is don't get greedy, right? You can't service the world. You can't service 10,000 locations. Google has their service area algorithm thinks you're only good out to about 2 hours from your location. So don't get greedy. Be honest. If you are working in an area, and then, I mean, I would create location-based pages that you and on those pages you could use a product like GatherUp that allows you to filter all your reviews by where those person was located, and you could just put the reviews from those people in that area on that page. So that page would have reviews on them. It would have information about the various services, link backs to your service page, and testimonials from the people in those areas. And the page would be the product services in this area, in these or it might be in these areas, whether it's one or two. I mean, one of the things we found is that title tag length doesn't have to be 63 characters. We found success going up 120, 130, 140 characters on related locations and neighborhoods. So you could do multiple locations on a given page and just add all those to the end of that title tag. Google will pull out the ones it needs or doesn't think it really drop the ones it doesn't need. So you could have a 130 character title tag, and Google's again only going to show 63, but having them there doesn't hurt you as long as you mention it on the page. So I would have service area pages that are meaningful, who, what, where kind of things, and have testimonials, and have a system that automatically updates those testimonials because you know where your customers are. You can tag them in GatherUp, and they'll flow to that page automatically.
Perfect. And you talked about like getting greedy, and I'd like to ask you, with location service pages, like let's say you have plumber in Portland, Oregon, you have a page for that. Would you also recommend, like for each individual service area, having like drain clearing in Portland, Oregon, and camera inspections in Portland, Oregon?
I don't
Things like that.
think so. I mean, again, it depends on the market. It depends on the budget. I think you can handle that with a good internal site architecture and good linking. I think Google can see that these services are important in this location because you've linked to them, high up on the page. I think Google's smart enough to see the context and the anchor text. So I don't think you need to. I mean, again, there's some balance here: cost, website content, having a lot of repetitive content, that sort of stuff. So I don't think you do, but again, you may find it works in some markets.
Perfect. And Google obviously has launched 2 recent updates where like there's a ton of people that are freaking out, losing a bunch of site traffic. That hasn't really affected me or any of the clients I'm working with. What kind of content have you seen Google punish in the last couple of months?
I've only been paying tangential attention to that, so I'm really not qualified to talk about it. But it's largely these large, like unrelated content on sites. So Forbes adds, 20,000 pages about some unrelated topic. That's the kind of stuff you're seeing getting nailed, or a whole bunch of crappy AI content. But the problem with Google's algorithm now and in the past, but now more so, it's AI driven. AI is only accurate within 75, 80, maybe 85, maybe 90%, which means that there's always some percentage of error whenever these algorithms are implemented. It's true in reviews, it's true in algorithm updates. So some amount of good sites are always impacted. To the flip side of this coin of Google nailing 85% of the bad sites, it got 15% of the good sites. So you'll hear a lot of complaints, and this is true with reviews as well. When they filter reviews, say when a review's left, some percentage of those reviews are going to get filtered unfairly because AI isn't fair. It's got a built-in inability to get better than about 10%. 90% accuracy, so 10% of mistakes. And if there are mistakes against you, it's painful.
Perfect. And we talked about a bunch of different things. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on?
I mean, as you pointed out, marketing is marketing. Suck less. Do a great job. Do it when you say you're going to do it. And then promote the heck out of the fact that that's what you're doing. Because in your industries, that's all you got to do to be incredible, right? I mean, when I find a person like that, I hang on to them and I never let them go. I'm gonna die before I let them go as a vendor to me, right? So I think that the trick to winning isn't winning the SEO battle, isn't getting the most backlinks, isn't even ranking first. The trick to winning is being really good at what you do, but what you do has to be expanded to understand that it's from the point that person sees you someplace. You have to be really good all the way through the lead, the call, the estimate, the completion of the job, not tracking your mud through the laundry room so my wife doesn't get mad at you, all the way back out the door, sending me the bill that was what you said you were going to send me, following up with me to make sure I'm happy. That's what you got to do. It's a bigger stack. And if you do that, you suck less and you do more. And then you tell people that you're doing more, or they tell people you're doing more, you'll win. I don't see it as anything different than it's ever been. Instead of taking on an ad in the local newspaper, you're taking on an ad on Google. But so what? You still got to do all the other stuff really well. And if you don't, God bless you, but you should be in another industry.
I love that. Mike, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I seriously appreciate it. Where can people find more about you? Where do you want to send people? Yeah.
Sure. Well, I want to send people to you, actually. I don't need it. I write at nearmedia.co. We have a subscription product where we sell a newsletter that we release twice a week. And it also comes with a once-a-month meetup with other experts in local. We also have a free subscription to our interviews and some content. And we also have free content on the website. That's at nearmedia.co. M. Blumenthal on Blue Sky would be my preference. I'm trying to minimize my presence on Twitter and LinkedIn just because I don't like either of them. So I'm on Blue Sky if you want to follow me socially. mblumenthal@nearmedia.co. I have an open email policy. Besides this analyst job where I'm doing consumer behavior research, on the side, I am helping with small businesses. I charge for this, for review takedowns, review recovery, and suspensions. So you can reach out to me if you're having problems with that. Or you can find me at the Google Business Profile forums. I am a diamond contributor there, and you'll find me there. So
Awesome.
wherever you look, you'll find me.
Well, I love that. Thank you so much for taking the time. I seriously.
Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it. Good luck
Of course.
to you.